All right, so let's take a look at this 1975 Oldsmobile 88 Royale Coupe and talk about the strange features, quirks, idiosyncrasies, etc. of it. First of all, this was the penultimate year for the full-size, and I'll call them the truly full-size Oldsmobiles and GM cars in general. 1976 will be the last year before they were downsized in 1977. So these are the largest full-size cars that General Motors made. You exclude the limousines, of course. And the 98 was indeed longer than the 88, but this was the biggest 88, and in part helped by the large 5-mile-an-hour impact standard bumpers that it has in the front and rear of the vehicle. Now up front, you can see that this vehicle has the round headlights, and next year, 1976, Oldsmobile would go to square headlights. That was becoming more in vogue, the square sealed beams. So this is the last year for the rounded headlights, and I think it gives it just a very tasteful look. You have here the Oldsmobile rocket logo, a very famous rocket logo. And if you've watched another video, a little piece of trivia on this, this was actually created based on Lincoln's emblem. And Oldsmobile chief designer Stan Weiland, when he redid it, wanted to use an upscale logo. Obviously didn't want to rob from Cadillac, so he took from Lincoln and put the rocket logo in the Lincoln symbol. And now that I said that, you probably can see it. Next, we have the grille on this Oldsmobile, which on the 88's dipped beneath the grille. I really should take this ugly license plate box off. It's not adding anything to the styling. But you have the beautiful below the bumper grille that the Cutlasses also did. And this one, to help with the impact standard, deflects and moves out of the way. Some of the Cutlasses also did that. But I thought that was kind of a neat feature of the Oldsmobile that helped you in the event of a crash. Next on this car, you have the cornering lights that you see here. Let's turn it on so you can get a better look at what those look like. Oh, and I have to have the headlamps on, or the parking lights at least. There you go. That was an optional feature on these 88s. Came in handy. And I think also good looking. Those are the optional wire wheel covers for the car. This car actually is a very rare model, not only because it's all black, but because it has no vinyl roof. So this is one of the so-called colonnade cars from GM. And if you haven't heard of that term, it just means this pillar that you see here. GM would revise its coupe styling in 1974 and the full-size cars in 1973 and the intermediates, and they'd have this very distinctive pillar, really in large part because they thought that there was going to be a rollover standard that was implemented, hence why the convertible was killed for a few years. And they thought, well, let's make the pillar part of the styling elements. Oldsmobile uniquely had this dropping glass here. If you look at Chevrolets and Cadillacs and Buicks, they don't have that rear quarter glass that drops as well. So this car is still a hardtop in spite of being a colonnade car. I really, really like the styling, especially devoid of the vinyl roof. 75 was also the first year for the catalytic converter, this big old pancake thing that was implemented to control emissions. And there it is. It also choked down horsepower. This is filled with pellets, and you can see there is, it's hard to see it, but it's right, let's see here. There it is. There's a plug that you can open and dump all the pellets out. The idea was that that might have to be refreshed. They didn't know how long the pellets were really going to last in there and be an effective emission control device. So it was made to be replaceable. Next, let's open the door. You can see the super cool interior. This is the 88 Royale, so you have the up-level interior. And let's take a look at the radio here. This is an AM radio with a power antenna. And I think one of the cool things you see, it says local and distance. So if I turn the key on, I turn the radio on, watch, there's no power antenna up. It stops there if you have it on the local setting. But if you flip it to the distance setting, it extends all the way. Now, if you put it back to local while it's already extended, nothing happens. You gotta restart the whole cycle. So you have to turn the radio back off. And unlike Ford and some other instances in GM history, here you turn the radio on and off and it operates the antenna. This is a no AC car, as you can see. It's got the plug here. It does have the center vent, and then there's no vent over there on the driver's side. It does have this pole that says center vent down here that activates this. Interestingly, you can pull this to activate the center vent, and you can also push this open. So if you pull that and you have this closed, you're not going to get any air. You have to have both open. It's kind of a redundant system, really, because this was here for the air-conditioned cars as well. So you can close it up just by going like that, or by closing the vent. Next, you have Oldsmobile's accelerator and brake pedal, which I think are the largest in the industry. My 66 Tornados might have been a little bit bigger. Buick also had big accelerator pedals, but that is giant. Certainly authoritative, although the 455 by this year is only making about 190 horsepower, unfortunately. You also can see the plug for the crotch cooler vents on the AC cars. And you have the vent poles down here that let in air, although they don't let in, like the other old school Oldsmobiles, there's not a kick well vent here. It just lets air kind of into the cabin as you're driving. Next, you have the wonderful turn signal. Gotta love that mechanical noise on these vehicles. Don't hear that anymore. And I think it's a cool looking turn signal in the IP. You also have out back courtesy lamps in the colonnade pillars and a very large package shelf. You also have, you can tell these cars are low mileage because the GMs with the seat belts in the roof, they have the seatbelt guides which often wear out from swiveling. And then this wears out, this clip, and breaks off. This is to adjust the seatbelt. It's a seatbelt guide. So if you have one, and it's still intact, chances are it's a low mileage car. Next, you have the quality of these vehicles, which is pretty abysmal. Yes, very abysmal. And so the gap's pretty big up there. It's also big up here. The door doesn't need to be shifted rearward. It's just not built very well. That's how these cars were at the time, unfortunately. You also have a so-called trapped hood design. Cadillac often didn't have this. They would have the hood come down all the way in the front and overlap. But Oldsmobile and some of the other GM makes would use this trapped hood design, and then this is actually made out of SMC, or I believe it's sheet molded compound, like a fiberglass. This is not metal, this panel up here. Of course, you have the cool Royale script. And then you have the beautiful key buzzer. Oh yeah, listen to that. The one thing that is sweet is the 455 that's under hood, which was optional in the 88s, standard in the 98s, standard in the Tornados too. And for 75, it was no longer a rocket, perhaps because it wasn't making much horsepower anymore. As you can see, this is a non-AC car, and it just has a non-declutching fan. The AC cars had a declutching fan and a very wimpy fan shroud. You also have, GM was big on putting this brake booster at an angle as opposed to being flat. I'm not quite sure why. It's just how they had them set up. You can see it's at an angle there, and then compared to this Ford, my 74 Mercury, it's just perfectly level. I don't know why GM elected to do that. You also have Oldsmobile. You can tell an Olds V8 because you have the vent fill tube up front, like you see here. There were some other GM V8s, some of the earlier Chevy V8s did have that, but by and large, Oldsmobile was the one that put the vent fill up top, especially in these years, in the mid-1970s. In any case, hope you enjoyed some of the strange features, quirks, etc. of the 75 Oldsmobile 88 Royale. Thanks for watching.